Good evening, TCS Church family. It is the 13th of January, and we are continuing our nightly devotions that we have on a Wednesday and a Friday. Just again to emphasise, if you need help, if you need prayer, there are two email addresses that you can use to get in touch with us. There is help@tcfperth.org.uk and there is hello@tcfperth.org.uk. And those emails come through to the leadership of the church, and then they can direct help to you at this time. On Sunday, we will continue our streaming of services, and we continue our study in Psalms, and we are looking at Psalm 3. And there'll be another devotion this week on Friday. So over the last three readings in the F260, so last Friday you would have read Job chapters 1 and 2, and then on the Monday and Tuesday of this week you would have read from 38 through to the end. So there's a fair bit missed out in the middle, and we'll just discuss that very briefly. And then I just want to focus on two passages just to give you something to take away and just think about, because that's the two passages that I've been thinking about. And that's not in a selfish way, but when we set up these devotions and we suggested the F260 reading scheme, if you look at the website, Steve had highlighted a method of Bible study called the HEAR method, which is H for highlight, E explain, A apply, and R respond. And so as I've been reading through these passages, that's what I've been thinking about. So if a verse comes to me or speaks to me specifically, I would highlight that verse and I would reflect on it, explain it, and think about how that would apply to my life and how I might respond to it. And I would encourage you to use that technique as you go through the F260 reading scheme. There are other acronyms that do the same sort of thing, where you focus, a passage speaks to you and you think about it, you chew it over, and then you apply it to your life and how this might affect you. So the book of Job is an incredible book. It's one of the oldest books in the Bible, which is why in the F260 reading scheme it's kind of popped in where it is, after Noah and before the Tower of Babel and Abraham, etc. Because it's a very old book, we don't know exactly when it was written. And it's one of those stories that you need to read the whole book. I remember once when I was in a youth fellowship when I was about 14, one of the leaders saying that they had been reading through Job and they were really, really grateful. They were praying, that they could have friends like Job, because his friends spoke into his life with such honesty and with such truthfulness. And of course, when you get to the end of the book, you realise that his friends were not necessarily speaking the truth. So it's important to have the beginning, the middle, and the end. And the reason I think that's important is because the book only makes sense if you have the whole book. And you need to understand the end, because the end makes sense of the beginning. And so this week and Saturday and Sunday, maybe when you have a wee bit more time, you could sit down and read the chapters that are not included in the reading scheme. And there's some tremendous verses in those parts. Some of the things that Job is asking for, some of the things that Job cries out to in the difficulty that he finds himself in. Because obviously we see in chapter 1 and 2, there's almost this kind of cosmic struggle. We're given this picture of heaven and Satan and God discussing this man, and God allowing Satan to do certain things to Job, because ultimately God will be glorified in this. And that can be quite a difficult thing to accept when we read what happens to Job. And understandably, Job finds things very difficult. And there's lots of crying and there's lots of questioning. And I think that's quite important as we come to the passage that we're just going to look at. So there's lots of crying, there's lots of questioning, there's lots of calling out in prayer to try and make sense of what is happening. and to try and understand what is happening. And so remember that, think about that as we come to look at the passages that I was, that have spoken to me in particular. So here we are with the Bible software open again. And so after chapters 1 and 2 and everything that's happened to Job, his friends come and see him, and there's lots of discussion, and they're pointing out the things that Job has done wrong, and that is why God is treating him the way he is. Because they had this understanding that God was showing justice to Job, and God was punishing Job because Job had sinned in some way. And throughout the chapters before we get to chapter 38, Job is protesting his innocence, and he's saying, I've not sinned. And he's also saying things like, why is God doing this? Is God being fair? And there's lots of questions and difficulties for Job. And so that's what happens over the course of the chapters. And then at the end, starting in chapter 38, then the Lord answered Job. So Job has all these questions, and then God speaks. And we have some of the best chapters in the Bible. And so the Lord speaks to Job, and the first thing he says is, who is this who obscures my counsel with ignorant words? Get ready to answer me like a man when I question you. Because Job's been questioning God. You will inform me. So God is, to use the modern phrase, God is calling Job out. Because Job has been saying to God, what are you doing? And God is saying, okay, will you come and answer me? And God repeatedly asked questions to which there were no answers. Because we know from when we looked at Genesis that God is all powerful. And that God can speak the world into being, and he did. And God said, let there be light, and there was light, and things like that. And so God asked Job's questions that Job has no answer to. But here's the passage that has really spoken to me, and something that I've been thinking about. And the reason this passage spoke to me is that I had been listening to the passages in an audio Bible. It's called the Dwell Bible app if you want it. It's like Spotify. It's like Spotify or iTunes for the Bible. It's fantastic. And I had never, I don't know if it was just because I was walking one day and it was being read to me, but I had just never quite caught the significance of this middle verse here. But if you think about it, you remember one of the things that really spoke to me in Genesis was, and he made the stars also. Maybe I should have been an astronomer, but he made the stars also. And when you think about all the physics that are involved in that, how the stars are held in place, all the gravitational fields, all the light, all the power, all the energy. And God says this to Job. Can you fasten the chains of the Pleiades or loosen the belt of Orion? Can you bring out the constellations in their season and lead the bear and her cubs? Do you know the laws of heaven? Can you impose its authority on earth? Can you command the clouds so that a flood of waters cover you? Can you send out lightning bolts and they go? Do they report to you? Here we are. And so this idea of fastening the chains of Pleiades or loosening the belt of Orion, just holding those stars in place, bringing the constellations out in their season, leading the bear and her cubs, the stars in the sky that have been named, that man have given names because of the figures they represent. And God is saying, I hold them all in place. And then this is a verse that I had never really noticed before. Do you know the laws of heaven? Can you impose its authority on earth? So one of the problems we have is we just don't know very much. We think we do, but we don't. And I don't know the laws of heaven. And I don't know how to bring the laws of heaven on earth. I don't know when the right time to bring the laws of heaven onto earth. I don't know how God is going to work all this out. But this is clearly a rhetorical question when God says to Job, can you impose its authority on earth? And what this implies to me is that God is doing what is required, and he can impose his will at any time, because he is the ultimate authority, the ultimate law of heaven, and he can impose and he can intervene when it is right and wise to do so. And I think this idea of knowledge, when God says, do you know? Because a lot of the questions that God asks Job are implying, do you know? Do you understand? And this is what Job says at the end, after God has been completely questioning him. And Job says, I know that you can do anything, and no plan of yours can be thwarted. So can God impose his will? Absolutely. Is God got plans for you, me, for this world? Absolutely. Can those plans be thwarted by any human or supernatural power? No. And then Job says, you ask me, who is this who conceals my counsel with ignorance? And then Job says this, surely I spoke about things I did not understand, things too wondrous for me to know. And then he says, I had heard reports about you, but now my eyes have seen you. So Job had all these questions, but he is given an incredible glimpse of God. He understands that God is all powerful. And he says, I spoke about things I did not understand, things too wondrous for me to know. You see, you and I are not God. We might want to be God, and sometimes we might think we would do a better job, because that's the arrogance of our sinfulness, the arrogance of humanness. But we speak about things we don't understand, and things too wondrous for me to know. And at the end of all this trouble, Job says this, I had heard reports about you. So Job knew about God, but now my eyes have seen you. Now he knows God. He doesn't just know about him, he knows him. He doesn't understand him fully. He doesn't know everything he's doing, but he knows him. And Job says, therefore, I reject my words, and I am sorry for them. Because Job understands who he is, and he understands who God is. So, what have I taken away from the readings of Job? That actually I don't know very much. And there will be things that happen in my life that I don't understand. There will be circumstances that I may be taken into that are not comfortable and not easy and frustrating and difficult. And I might think, well, if I wasn't in this circumstance, that would be better. But like Job, we need to learn, and I need to learn to be able to say, no plan of yours can be thwarted. And I spoke about things that I didn't understand and things too wonderful for me. You see, the Bible is all connected. And so on Sunday when Peter was preaching and he said God is immutable, I can honestly say we did not plan that Psalm 2 would be in the Sunday between the readings of Job. We just didn't. But Peter preached about God being unchanged and the security of that and the absolute wonder of God keeping his promises. And then we have a whole book where really bizarre things happen and really uncomfortable things happen to Job. But God is there in the end. He is there in the whirlwind speaking to Job. And Job knows God at the end. And his relationship with God is increased. So things are very difficult at the moment. I know that. Many of us are struggling. Many of us are finding this very difficult. And I have so many questions about why things are happening the way they are, why governments are doing what they're doing, questions about just the world in general and some of the badness, the way things are changing. But I need to rest in the one who says, do you know the laws of heaven? And can you impose its authority on earth? Which shows me that this is not something I need to be worried about. This is not something I need to be concerned about, because no plan of God's can be thwarted. And I, you, his children, are in his hand, and their destiny is secure. So we need the right perspective. We need to understand who we are, and we need to understand who God is. And the bigger our idea of God, the bigger our perspective of God, I think the more peace, the more trust, and the more hope we will have, because we will look to the one who is the source of all peace and all hope and is an absolute rock, rather than looking to ourselves. Let's pray. Father, I thank you that the Bible has books like Job, that your words to us, your book, your explanation of who you are and your plan for humanity does not shy away from the difficulties of life. I thank you for your awesomeness, your greatness, for these questions that are posed to Job for which there is no answer. No answer in humanity, no answer from the smartest person, no answer from the smartest computer, the most powerful intelligence, whatever. There is no answer, because you are God. And despite all this, despite this majesty and power, you are fundamentally interested in all of us. The hairs of our head are numbered. Not one little bird falls without you knowing. You are intimately involved with us. You offer relationship to us. You offer fatherhood, a family, a welcome, love, acceptance, forgiveness, and an eternal destiny of security. Father, enlarge our hearts and our vision to see you more, to look up rather than looking out or down, but to fix our eyes on you. Because as we fix our eyes in you, we will understand that no plan of yours can be thwarted, and that you are the ultimate law of heaven, and you can impose your authority on the earth, and you hold all things in your hands. Help us to trust you. Help us in our doubts, our fears, our difficulties, our struggles, as many of us are finding at the moment. Help us to cling to you. And by the power of your Holy Spirit, we ask that the Comforter, the Advocate, would lead us into all truth, and provide us with your peace. For we ask this in the Lord's precious name. Amen. Good evening, everybody. Focus on God. Think about Him. And hopefully we'll see you all soon in person. Goodbye.